Hello and good day everyone. I am Ralson M. Hernandez. Thank you for taking the time to watch my research proposal presentation for DEVCOM 204, Communication Research and Evaluation. The proposed title of my study is Positibo, Looking into Filipinos Living with HIV/AIDS, Self-Concept and Interpersonal Communication. Health is one of the societal problems that development communication can address here in the Philippines. This includes malnutrition and various illnesses. One of these is HIV and AIDS, which is very timely. Before we dig deeper into HIV and AIDS in the Philippines, let's start by defining these two terms. The World Health Organization defines human immunodeficiency virus or HIV as a virus that infects cells of the immune system, destroying or impairing their function. Infection with the virus results in progressive deterioration of the immune system, leading to immune deficiency. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS, on the other hand, is defined by the World Health Organization as a term which applies to the most advanced stages of HIV infection. It is defined by the occurrence of any of more than 20 opportunistic infections or HIV-related cancers. Globally, there are 36.7 million people living with HIV. This is based on the latest estimate by WHO and Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS or UNAIDS in 2015. 2.1 million of these people are newly infected, and for the worst case, 1.1 million people died due to various HIV-related causes. In relation to this emerging global issue, one of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, was to combat HIV/AIDS. These goals were set to be achieved by the end of year 2015. Now, the goal is to build a more sustainable world through the 17 new Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. The third goal is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. One of the targets for this goal is to end the epidemics of AIDS, along with other diseases by year 2030. Per the latest data presented by the United Nations, AIDS is the second most common cause of death among adolescents globally. While in the Philippines, there is around 42,000 Filipinos living with HIV by the end of 2015 per UNAIDS data. According to UNICEF or United Nations Children's Fund, the Philippines is one of only 7 countries globally where the number of new HIV cases has increased by over 25% from year 2001 to 2009. New infections are largely concentrated among key populations with specific risk behaviors such as unprotected male-to-male sex, transactional sex, and drug use. Hence, the Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS are classified by UNAIDS into female sex workers, male sex workers, men who have sex with men, people who inject drugs, and transgender individuals. There are some non-government organizations in the Philippines that aim to raise awareness and provide support to those who have HIV and AIDS. One of these organizations is the Positive Action Foundation Philippines Incorporated. Its mission is to contribute to national responses in advocacy, prevention, care, treatment, and support for people living with HIV/AIDS, their affected family members, and significant others. One of their projects is Bahay Kanlungan, wherein they provide temporary shelter for those who seek for a place to stay. Another one is Love Yourself PH. They conduct social interactions and activities to raise awareness, educate, and counsel Filipinos with regard to HIV. While it is important to discuss issues such as HIV and AIDS prevention, or maybe try to do a study that can help in the pursuit of discovering its cure, it is equally important to listen to the stories of those people who are already living with HIV and AIDS. It is important to understand their everyday experiences, how they interact with other people, and also how they build relationships. That is why, through this study, I would like to understand and eventually describe how Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS perceive themselves, and build relationship through interpersonal communication. Specifically, I want to identify the central themes on the self-concept of Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS, describe their experiences of interaction and communication with people who do not have HIV/AIDS, and lastly, identify the different types of relationships that they have with other people. This study is very important since HIV/AIDS is one of the most prevalent issues in the Philippines right now. It can help in raising awareness on HIV/AIDS. Also, it would help us understand the Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS through their stories. The results can also help the organizations understand the best approach that they can use in communicating with and reaching out to Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS. I have to ensure, however, that the confidentiality of the participants' information will be treated with high regard in the conduct of this study. As discussed earlier, there are 42,000 Filipinos living with HIV and 6,400 of them are considered to be new infections. Both of these numbers are increasing according to the data from UNAIDS. While AIDS-related deaths is less than 1,000, there is still a lot of work to do to address this concern. One study about perception of people living with HIV/AIDS about uncertainty was conducted by Brashers et al. In 2000. The results showed that the participants faced uncertainty about the different aspects of their life due to HIV infection. My study will somehow investigate on the possible self-concept that the participants have. Another study is the effects of mass media on HIV/AIDS related knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors. This study was conducted by Bertrand et al. In 2006 and it deals with the relationship between media and HIV-related knowledge, attitude, and behavior. There is a possibility that my study would uncover facts about the relationship of media and the self-concept of people living with HIV and AIDS. A peer education study about HIV/AIDS prevention among Filipino taxi and tricycle drivers was conducted by Morisky et al. In 2005, while the study of Peterson et al. In 2012 focuses on peer social support among people living with HIV/AIDS. My study will be looking into interpersonal communication between people living with HIV/AIDS and those people surrounding them. Lastly, a development communication study on men who have sex with men by Aranas shows that Filipinos do not ascribe too much importance to HIV/AIDS. This is where my study comes in. It will dig deeper into the world of Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS and preferably cover other sectors such as female sex workers, male sex workers, people who inject drugs, and transgender. Based on this literature, there really is a need to conduct study about self-concept and interpersonal communication of people living with HIV and AIDS in the Philippine context and in development communication perspective. With that, it is important to answer the following questions. Number 1, in what themes do the lives of Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS revolve with regard to self-concept? Number 2, what are their experiences of interaction and communication with people who do not have HIV/AIDS? And number 3, what are the different types of relationships that they have with other people? However, we have to understand that there is a possibility for research questions to change over the course of the study, as I will use grounded theory as my guide. According to Charmas, systematic and flexible guidelines comprise grounded theory that help in the collection and analysis of qualitative data. These guidelines help in constructing theories grounded in the data themselves. That leads us to the proposed methodology for this study. To achieve the objectives of this study, I will be employing a qualitative research design. It will be guided by the grounded theory. According to Heath and Cowley in 2003, unlike quantitative research, a qualitative study starts with data gathering to formulate ongoing plans and eventually discover relevant information to find the most applicable research questions. The target participants are Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS to be identified with the help of one organization, the Positive Action Foundation Philippines Incorporated. In case of any unforeseen circumstances, I can also work with other similar organizations in identifying my participants. My proposed sampling procedure for this study, which I think is the most applicable, is the theoretical sampling. As guided by Baxter and Babby's definition in 2004, I will be choosing participants who may be relevant to the specific stories or phenomena that interest me. It is also a strategy that involves looking for and collecting relevant data to refine categories according to sheer mass. Furthermore, the primary research instruments that will be utilized are interview schedule and field notes. Since the data will be collected through direct observation and narrative interviewing. But again, I have to take note that I do not need to limit myself to my initial plan on collecting data, as it will also affect the phenomena that I will see and what sense I will make of them. Narrative or intensive interviewing fits grounded theory methods well, as they are both open-ended and flexible as per sheer mass. Furthermore, interviewing will help me have more direct control on how I can organize and analyze the data. I can also have my field notes generated from what I observed while conducting the study. Once I am done with data collection, I can start with the analysis. I will be using coding to analyze the collected data from the interview and field notes. The collected data will help in the possible development of an emergent theory to explain this data. The initial coding will involve reviewing and naming of words, concepts, and segments of data that will help me in defining and developing different categories. Next step will be to narrow down the initial codes and highlight those that are relevant to the objectives of my study. In the last step of the coding process, I will select categories and analyze, validate, and refine them under the core categories. This will then help me obtain themes through thematic categorization approach on data analysis. As development communication practitioners, it is indeed our responsibility to tackle issues like this and take the first step to let stories of marginalized sectors in the Philippines be heard. Thank you very much, everyone.